Hi. I always feel like I should have some kind of trademark opening or trademark, like and subscribe phrase, the way a lot of YouTubers do. I've got Sophia Nygaard and people like that, and they always have this really interesting way of saying subscribe or something. And I kind of feel like I should do that, but no, not going to mess with it. So, hey, it's Jim, otherwise known as PenSloth, and this is Nib Stacking Fundamentals number 2, tools. So you too can be a tool. Well, dirty fingers. Anyway, there's also going to be a list of tools that I'm going to include as a Google Doc link in the description of the video. So download that. It's a little more in-depth explanation because I don't want to get into showing you my welder because the camera's attached to the welder, a Fordham, which is basically, as I've said in the past, a Dremel on steroids. You can look that up yourself. I've got links. There are other tools, though, that are more in the land of consumables, as we would call it in, say, the jewelry industry or knife making. I already talked to you about sandpaper and diamond plates, so you've got that down. I hope you've been practicing your architect grinds. But let's get into the stuff that might not be quite as, familiar. So there are a couple of things you really need, in my opinion. Remember, everything I'm telling you here is in my opinion only. You want to get a good flat file. Smooth cut is good. Most everybody knows what a flat file looks like. I actually prefer what's called a fret file or a fret cutting file for doing guitar work. It's got a diamond cross section. It's really sharp along the edges. And, well, let me borrow a nib here and I'll show you what you do with it. When you section down a nib, it's really difficult to get equal on both sides. So what you want to do is file down the side until, if you're doing a diamond cut, so both sides are equal and it doesn't look off center. So that's what you need one of these for, and because of that lovely straight length, you get a very nice precise file. Another thing you definitely want to get in the realm of abrasives. Let me move a few things here because I've got it all laid out behind the camera. I'll talk about those in a minute. You want a set of polishing burrs, or rather silicone polishing thing. They usually come with mandrels, so you don't have to worry about it too much. I get a lot of stuff from jewelry suppliers like Auto Fry, Guess Wine, and Rio Grande. I used to do jewelry work years ago, not very well, but I did it. And so I got accounts with these guys, and I've just kept them up over the years. They do sell to the general public. Sometimes they upcharge, so I just want to, let you know that you might find that suddenly there's 15% more attached to your checkout than you planned on. Anyway, this set is great because it ranges from various levels of abrasive, from really coarse, moderately coarse, down through very nice and fine to the pink, marvelous pink, which is very fine. I mean, it's not quite mirror polish, but it's up there. And you get in some cases, the little cylinders, the knife edge ones, and the wheels. The wheels, in my opinion, are what you're going to be using the most of, but I could be wrong. Ultimately, whatever you do with tools, you're going to customize based on what you decide you like. So I'm just telling you what I do and the sort of tools I use. So you want abrasives, polishing stuff. The nice thing about this is if you just decide, screw this stacking nib thing, I just want to polish nibs, this is where you go from sandpaper and diamond stones. Especially the fine ones. You want those. Those are great. along the same lines, speaking of fine abrasives, where the hell did that go? There you go. This is what they call an Italian green. It's a one-step polishing wheel. It'll take off rough scratches all the way through, doing right up to the pink mirror polish. These things are God for abrasives as far as I'm concerned. So whatever you do, find these and buy some. You'll thank me for this. Trust me. You absolutely will. Another thing in terms of grinding, just to have on hand, you'll want, abrasives like these. These are aluminum oxide. They're really crunchy. I think it's maybe 80 grit, which means you'll get through things relatively quick. You want some of these. They come in different sizes. The cylinders are good, but you can also get the wheels, whatever ultimately works for you, but get the cylinders first just to try them out. Another thing you're going to find really useful in the land of abrasives, you can get these diamond wheels on AliExpress all day long for, $5 for 10, something like that. They do eventually degrade because you might end up using these to do point work on the nib. So you've got something that's really, really hard, just shaving off the plating and the diamond abrasive over time. But you buy 20 of them, do you really care? Chances are, no, you don't. Not even I do, and I'm a penny pincher. So there are other things that are, in my opinion, equally important, if not more important than those. You want cutoff discs for your Dremel. You mount these on a mandrel, as you'd normally expect. This is, I'm not even sure what kerf this is. It's not particularly big. This one is silicon carbide. Silicon carbide versus aluminum oxide, they just break down differently. Silicon carbide stuff, when it breaks down into finer abrasives, does so in points, whereas aluminum oxide breaks off into rounder abrasive as it degrades. It's just a matter of, well, I'm not going to say personal preference. I think aluminum oxide cuts nicely, but silicon carbide goes faster. So that's up to you. This sort of diameter, which is, okay, let's call it a 1/10 of an inch, probably less than that, is just fine. But get fine. Don't get, your typical chunky bastards that are 1/16. You'll be grinding at things forever. It'll heat up the nibs. You'll burn your fingers. It sucks. So get thin ones. Now, get into pro tip. In my opinion, pro tip. You might decide it's not. People wonder what you use to reslit fountain pen nibs if you've retipped them. This is as close as you're going to get to something that isn't produced for the industry specific or custom produced for a company. That's just a fraction of a hair larger than a lot of nib slits are. I have gotten abrasive discs that are specifically for fountain pen nib slitting, but let me explain something. So this is one of these guys. I've been using it a bit, so it's worn down. They're fragile. They're really fragile. The other ones that I got from China are more fragile than these are, if you can believe that. When you buy these, buy them by, say, 50 at a time. Because if you're doing your cutting manually with a Fordham, Dremel, what have you, you change the angle in a minuscule way, these things will just shatter on you. So I've mentioned, optivisors in the past and things like this and knocking shit over in the background. You want eye protection of some kind, and optivisors are fine for that, because when these little guys break, they're doing it at speed. They can cut skin real easily. You may not even notice that you're bleeding until something is damp. So that's all I'm going to say about this. They're worth the money, but you're going to end up paying about $1 a disc in the end. Also useful, but somewhat slightly thicker. Again, AliExpress is your friend. Diamond dental cutting wheels. If I could get, God knows, diamond that's only on the rim, not on the surface, I would be in heaven, because that's all I'd use. Another problem is these guys are flexy, and the hotter they get, the more flexible they get. They're not great for doing anything more than cutting nibs apart. You can't reslit a nib with these and expect to get good results. So they're great for other things, but not this. Another thing, I mentioned widget supply in the suppliers links. They're really great to get weird stuff, because they're one of these, we buy in bulk and dispose of it at reduced prices. These little thin discs are so great for polishing little teeny areas. You've got your fines, your mediums. Actually, no, this is the medium, this is the coarse. If they have them, buy some. Trust me on this. Again, you'll thank me later. Another thing that they have, this lovely wheel is compressed leather. I do not shit you, compressed leather. You compress leather and enough, and you have natural silicates in there from the tanning process. I'm going to say this is in the land of between 320 and 600 grit, as they measure here in the United States. These are really great for shaping tipping material, and it takes a while for them to wear down. So think about these. Just keep them in the back of your head. Very useful stuff. Also on the list that I mentioned are round-nosed jeweler's pliers. These are Beetalons, I believe. Very small, round nose, great for doing chains and stuff like this. But they're also great for small adjustments to the radii or curve of a nib or section of a nib that you're going to be welding down. I mention in the list, but don't have one of. If you've never seen parallel action pliers, these are them. They're great because with normal pliers, you don't get equalized pressure along the jaw. You do with this, and those like it. Get a needle nose version. I've had these for so long, it's not even funny. They last forever because they're great for holding on to things, of course, because that's what you do with pliers. I also suggest forceps or hemostats. You can get these on Amazon. They're made in Pakistan. They're good for holding things. Here's pro tip. You can find these little guys that are called gauze forceps or towel forceps. Normally, these points curve in further and overlap, and they're very sharp. Once you get your cutting discs, slice off the sharp parts. So what you've got, you bend these in a little bit, so you've got two flat areas that clasp very nicely together. This is good for holding stuff like nib sections together. I've used it for a lot of things, and for, I think, $4 on Amazon, it's one of the best purchases I've made in a while. So remember these. Remember to cut the sharp bits off. If you want to get crazy, polish down the insides. I haven't done that. I don't think you need to. So that's probably about it in the land of tools, again, except for welders, Optivisor, rotary tool of choice. I will mention, and I do bring this up in the list of tools, the biggest money you're going to spend is your welder. The cheap orange or blue Chinese jewelry welders you're going to find on Amazon, will they weld the nibs? Yes. Will they do it cleanly? Not so much. Plus, they're a complete snot to use in terms of getting the needle of the welder and your welding pieces in the precise place long enough to weld them. It's very tough. I spent a significant amount of money on my welder. It's worth it. If you're going to do these with any thought to selling them later, spend the money on a welder. There you go. Just that simple. I also mentioned that I don't solder things. I don't know how to solder, except jewelry, which is great. The only problem is you're looking at 1200 degrees Fahrenheit for easy flow silver solder. That's not going to work for the nibs, because even stainless, if there's any hardness at all in the stainless, it's not going to be hard by the time you've used that solder to put things together. Also, there's the flux issue, because where the liquid flux goes, the solder flows with it, which means you can clog up that slit in that breather hole instantly. Now, there's a caveat to this if you know soldering. Use a low flow solder and very judicious use of flux, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be able to solder nibs together rather than weld them. Again, I can't say I've never done it. You can use epoxy or super glue. Just realize they're going to fall apart. And if that's okay with you, that's fine. Don't worry about it. So that's fundamentals, tools, and consumables. All I can say is from here on out, we're going to get into some practical stuff and ultimately, I think, show you how to do this in such a way that'll make sense. So thanks a lot for watching. Hope you got something out of this. Sign of the sloth, that's as close as I'm going to get to something fancy to say. And I'll talk to you soon.